Okay, I think we're I think we're working here, hopefully. Let's see. All right. Maybe there we go. I think now it's connecting. If anybody watching could comment where they're from, like a hello, to make sure that I can see the comments, that would be wonderful. I'm just hopping on a little bit early to make sure all the technical difficulties are doing okay. I'm not in my normal setup. I'm at my parents' house this weekend for a trip, so I just wanted to make sure it's all working correctly. So, hello to everybody who's watching. My name is Kylie. I'll get started a little bit closer to the hour. But like I said, I just wanted to hop on a little bit to make sure that everything's working. Hello, hi, yes. Okay, comments are working. That's awesome. Perfect. Noreen from Chicago. Hi, Noreen. The painting behind me. Thank you. It's my mom's. I'm in my mom's house right now. Normally I'm in Minneapolis, but I'm in Iowa this weekend. So, all right. Looks like we're getting some more people to join. I know I'm on a little bit early, so for those of you just jumped on, if you want to say hello and tell me where you're watching from, we'll get started closer to the hour. I'm assuming everybody can hear me okay too, so always like to make sure of all that. Yeah, I did. I just, one of those things you forget when you wear glasses that all the reflections. An NC, all right, awesome. All right, looks like, hey, Andrew. Awesome. Just a couple more seconds here and then we'll get started. Just want to make sure everybody, I looked like the devil. Oh no. Yeah, my eyes are glowing. These are new glasses too, so they're like super clean, so they probably reflect everything really well. Oh my goodness. Awesome. Well, just a couple more seconds here. Make sure everybody that's wanting to join joins. I don't want to start too early. We'll just, like I said, for those of you who are hopping on, just let me know where you're watching from, see where we're all kind of connect to. Right, with the ring light yesterday, I knew what you meant, yeah. I have my laptop over here so that it doesn't have a reflection there because in case I needed to switch over to the laptop or something, I have it handy just in case. Wasn't sure how my phone would connect, but I see that it is the time, so I'll go ahead and introduce myself a little bit more specifically than I did yesterday. So, like I said, my name is Kylie, and I'm a registered dietitian, and I'm based in Minneapolis, Minnesota. I've been at RD for about 5 years now. I got my undergrad at Iowa State University in dietetics, and then I just finished a master's degree in exercise science this last December at California University of Pennsylvania. It's a mouthful, right? Um, and I kind of have a little like my own reasoning for getting into dietetics was kind of based on my own personal health problems. When I was 19, I started having chronic pain and they didn't really know why. Fast forward through all the boring details. Basically, at age 24, I had gained a lot of weight. It was really hard for me to have any kind of activity happening in my day to day life. I was actually starting to study nutrition. And I decided to have bariatric surgery at the age of 24. So I had Roux-en-Y gastric bypass. Well, gosh, yeah, when I was 24. So that's been a while now. It seems like it was just yesterday. Um, so that's kind of what sparked my interest in helping those other, helping others with, nutrition and if their physical health, because I learned firsthand how important it is to take care of your physical health through nutrition, exercise, and all of those things, and how it's not, nutrition's a little bit more complicated than you might originally think. So that's kind of what sparked my path down dietetics. A little bit more about my career path. I actually didn't get my internship on my first match. So I worked as a nutrition educator at a WIC here in Iowa for about a year. Then I went and did my internship. And then once I finished my internship, I actually got a job as a retail dietitian. So I was actually a retail dietitian for about 4.5 years before I became a dietitian at the Substance Use Disorder Treatment Center. So we specialize in mental health and chemical dependency. So that's kind of where I am now. The reason why I found this area kind of interesting was that I do have friends and family who have, dealt with addiction and recovery. So it's always been something that I've kind of had an interest in, but didn't really think about it as a career path until recently when I got laid off from my retail job. I was kind of really thinking about where I wanted to go. I saw, contracting jobs open for substance use centers, but nothing that was full time until the current job I have now, where I'm actually one of 4 registered dietitians on staff. So that's really cool, having a whole team of dietitians help with the recovery of our clients and things like that. So that's a little bit about how I got to where I am. Honestly, it's not one I like. It was one of those things too that was I just happened to know the people who worked there. I walked into the interview and 2 of my former interns were there, so as the other 2 dietitians. So it was definitely one of those right place, right moment, knowing the right people that kind of got me set up with this area too. So pretty interesting. So I'll go ahead, if you don't mind. I'm going to take a sip of water. I've been having a little bit of like allergy problems. So dealing with a little bit of a dry throat. So I apologize for needing some water occasionally, but um, so that was a little bit about me. To kind of maybe discuss a little bit about where I work specifically, just to kind of give you a background of the treatment center. So it's um, centered in Minneapolis, Minnesota, but we do have a gender, oh my gosh, words. They're gender specific. There we go. So we do have a women's building and a men's building. So we do keep them separate. So I actually cover both buildings. So I help with the male clients and the female clients. We specialize in mental health and chemical dependency. So it's kind of always paired together. We also have, different counselors who can handle different types of mental illness disorders and things like that. So they get kind of matched to their counselor based on their diagnoses and things like that. We also have a culturally specific program. So for our African American clients that want a little bit more specific treatment with their culture in mind, they have that option as well. So that's a little bit about how like our programming can kind of separate the clients into their different areas. We basically, our main job as the dietitians is kind of help facilitate the behavior change. Goal number 1 is obviously to help them stay sober and kind of deal with their recovery, right? So what our team does, we call ourselves a medical services team because we have some RNs and we have some RDs on our team. So the RNs kind of help with their medications because a lot of them are on meds, not only for their mental diagnosis, but also many of them come to us with other chronic illnesses. And so that's kind of where we as the dietitians come in play. We help with medical nutrition therapy quite often to kind of help them navigate maybe the newness of a chronic illness that they maybe haven't been taken care of and things like that. So that's kind of probably our main job. And we also do other simple things like maybe just help them set up a doctor's appointment or things like that if they're just not sure who to call yet. We do get some of them from, different areas of the country. Like some come from Chicago to us, so they don't always have a primary care physician on staff or on staff. They don't always have a primary care physician set up yet, so we kind of help them with that as well. We also partner with a local clinic that comes in twice a week to each clinic. that will help them with their medications too. They'll help write prescriptions. They'll make sure that they're taking their medications, as prescribed and things like that. So we do have, even though they're not part of our staff, we do have those physician assistants coming in twice a week to kind of help us make sure that our clients have, help with their physical health. A lot of our clients, specifically at this clinic, do come to us from court. So whether that would be drug court, DUI court, or even like child services court, things like that. That's where we get the majority of them from. So it does mean that we're dealing with a lot of food insecurity, homelessness, and other things like that kind of can go along with that. So what we have also on staff to kind of help with that is social workers. So the counselors aren't solely in charge of all of the needs of their clients. We have the social workers, we have the dietitians, the nurses, we've that multiple, oh my gosh, I can't talk today, I swear. You guys know what I'm trying to say anyways. Disciplinary team, that's the word I'm trying to say. So we have a bunch of us that kind of try to help take care of the needs of the clients, because we do have a client base that do tend to have a lot of needs. Other things that are kind of interesting that we do, we also help run a lot of the group class times too. So that's kind of the majority of their programming is group facilitated times. So they do about 45 hours of group a week. And within that 45 hours is when they'll have their one-on-one therapies and things like that. But we do assist and teach a lot of groups as well. So trying to get a little bit of nutrition education to them through them as groups and as individuals. Oh, a couple questions. Perfect. Mm. Do I find that the issues around nutrition for our clients are very specific to what sort of drugs they have been using? Yes. Some of the big ones off the top of my head is opioids. They cause a lot of GI distress once they're coming off of them. So there's a lot of times that we're helping them just deal with their healing their gut before we really focus on their nutrition. A lot of the stimulants and things like that will make it so that they're not eating or taking good care of themselves while they're using. So coming off the drugs, a lot of times we're dealing with very undernourished individuals. And just about any drug of choice that they're using, they're going to have signs of vitamin deficiencies. So typically that's another big thing that we're looking for with our assessments, is kind of looking more specifically to their vitamin deficiencies. Obviously, drug of choice changes that a little bit. For example, like alcoholics, we're kind of focused a little bit more on the B vitamins and things like that. For the most part, I would feel like I educate them all very similarly. It's more of just for my own clinical judgment, knowing what drug of choice they're using kind of allows me to know what more specific questions I might ask if they're not feeding me a lot of information, if that makes sense. Because, sometimes when you're doing assessments, having the clients answer the questions fully or, understanding it completely, that can be a hard part. Do we serve meals at this facility and teach them cooking and living skills? That's a great question. So currently what we're doing is kind of starting this program with the dietitians. They've really have only had the dietitians around in this clinic for about a year. Well, a year plus the COVID year that we don't really count, right? We couldn't really do a whole lot during that year. So we're actually now fully staffed at 4 dietitians, and now we're trying to develop the programming that we want to see for our clients. The big things that we're doing now are the individual assessments and appointments, and then the group classes, where we do try really hard to teach those living skills, but obviously it's a little bit hard. So what we're trying to implement now is the cooking classes. So we are kind of working with the health department to making sure that we have the right facilities and things like that to do the cooking classes. And the little bit different thing about our treatment facility too is that it is actually considered outpatient. So we don't serve food there, but we do provide housing, because we do have an option of intensive outpatient with housing. So that's kind of what we're considered. We're not an inpatient facility. So basically, we provide them a sober house to live in and transportation to and from the clinic. So they prepare their own foods. We do take them to the grocery store once a week. They get $45 from us to spend. So they do kind of prepare their own foods. That's what a lot of our individual appointments are kind of centered on, is helping them know maybe how to shop with that kind of budget for foods that will help them feel better throughout the recovery and things like that. But yes, ideally, we will be moving our programming into more more active life skills classes versus just lecture style classes, if that makes sense. And let me scroll down. And then Noreen, great question. So it is not inpatient. We're considered intensive outpatient with housing. But we do normally have them in our programming for an average of 90 days. About half of that is within our housing. And then typically the goal of the social workers and their counselors is to help them step down into either back into their home or into more permanent sober living, or even if, deciding if they need to go to a different type of outpatient treatment center as well. So those are kind of the things that they do there. And then let me keep scrolling. Do I go to them with the grocery store? No, we do not. It's kind of like a quick in and out grocery shopping trip for them. We have a partnership with one of the grocery stores nearby that kind of allows them to come in and just kind of ring things up really quickly and then get back to the houses and things like that. So I do not go to the store with them. So that's been something that I'm definitely looking in, seeing if there's some way we can do that. But for the most part, I use the individual sessions to kind of go over meal planning, budgeting, and things like that. Seema, you're a dietitian at a substance abuse facility too? Awesome. We should definitely connect then, because like I said, we're just kind of starting up our programming. So I'd love to pick your brain for ideas that work for you. But yeah, so that's kind of the interesting part, is that we are kind of deciding what this programming is going to look like. So there's a lot of me asking the clients what they need and us trying to figure out how we can facilitate that. There's quite a bit of just research out there that you can look at. I personally haven't found a ton of resources quite yet. A lot of the things I've kind of been looking at is just the research. So, and I'm still pretty new to this area, to be honest. I started in March of this year, so I'm still kind of trying to connect and find all of those good resources too. But I have found some really good research papers and things like that. So I put my email in the description. If anybody wants to shoot me an email, I can send you some of the resources I do have. How many outpatients come to the clinic per day? That's a great question. So right now our numbers are kind of low with it being summertime. I would say, I think each house has about 8 guys living in it. So, and then we have probably, I would say we're close to 100 clients in the male clinic, and then probably about half of that in the women's clinic. So about, I would say about 150. That's me just trying to remember exactly what our caseload looks like right now, and it's pretty low, honestly, just because with COVID there wasn't a lot of court open, and that's where we get the majority of our clients from, is from court. So with the courts being kind of closed and not really running during COVID, we just kind of are starting to get more clients in as the summer kind of continues. So that's a big one. I would say the big question I usually get from clients is why dietitians in a treatment center. That's usually what they usually say to me, is like, why do I care about my nutrition? Like, isn't it enough that I'm off my drug of choice? So we have sober housing available for them. So we're intensive outpatient with housing, basically, is what we're classified as. And we have 4 different sober houses for the men and then 1 for the women that they can live at. They each have different units inside of them. So basically everybody gets their own apartment right now. That's how low we are in numbers. But yeah, so that's a big question I get from clients. I would say we don't get a ton of pushback, but that is the big question that I always get is like, why do you care about what I'm eating? Like, aren't you just happy I'm off my drug of choice? And my answer to them is always, well, yes, like that is a huge first step, right? But behavior change comes in all types of forms and all types of motivation. And sometimes caring about our physical health is getting off the drug of choice, but sometimes it's also, caring about what we're putting inside our body. Plus, the research is there that when we pair nutrition education with recovery assistance, that they do start feeling better while they're in recovery, which helps them stay sober a little bit easier once they kind of like feel better physically. So that's a great question. Does it make me want to go on and get another degree or training? So a lot of the other dietitians actually, one has a master's in social work and one has a master's as a marriage and family counselor. So it's definitely made me start thinking that I want to get a little bit more background in counseling, since that's a big thing that they do. That's the main type of treatment that they're doing with these clients is therapies and then the group classes. So a lot of it has made me um, really try to hone in on my counseling skills and my, the motivational interviewing and all of that. So it's definitely starting to spark my interest that maybe I want to do a little bit more with the public health things. But yeah, that's kind of the big joke. It with the dietitians, once you come in, they usually always go off to go get another degree more specific to treatment. So, um, I don't have any plans right now, but it sounds like it could potentially be something that happens in the future. I'm gonna grab another drink of water quick. So yes, that's a huge one. That's a big one. Um, and then a lot of questions I've gotten too. Let's see, do you have Oh, yeah, that's pretty common, unfortunately, because we are considered outpatient, so we don't force anybody to stay there. We do have rules where they're, not supposed to leave unless they have a pass from their counselor and things like that. But we don't, we're not inpatient, so we don't have any way to kind of make them stay there. So we do quite often have clients go AWOL or absence without leave. So, and a lot of times that's because they've relapsed and things like that. Deaths don't occur very often. Overdoses aren't a huge thing that happens. Um, Occasionally does. We're all Narcan trained, obviously, and things like that. But for the most part, if a relapse happens, a lot of them are pretty good at coming in and admitting it, or they just kind of, maybe go AWOL for a while and then come back as a client later. David Wiss. Oh, somebody just mentioned him to me the other day. So I've heard of him, but I haven't looked into a lot of it. But I'm curious to see if I looked back at a lot of the things I've read, it probably was stuff that he did. So I'm just like, yes, I need to. I That's my plan, is to kind of look a little bit more into him because I just heard about him the other day. But like I said, there's definitely plenty of research out there that helps show how awesome like nutrition education really helps the clients just feel better and do better in recovery. So I think it helps too. Most of us are super passionate about how nutrition can really help you, not only short-term goals but long-term goals. So it's it's a lot of us just building that rapport with them so that they really see how important it is to care about their physical health and more than just getting off their drug of choice. So that's been a big goal of mine, is to help them with trusting healthcare professionals a little bit more, since that's a big one for a lot of them. Um, you see the other, I took a couple notes to make sure I wanted to talk about everything, but Um, so that's a great question. Have I had any clients turning to alternative medicine? It's very rare in this population. Most of them have been in jail and they're just used to like bologna sandwiches and things like that. So they're not really exposed to a lot of that alternative medicine. Uh, so they're not usually too into it. I get occasional questions about like, should I take different supplements in this? And we usually just turn them to a general multivitamin and then get them to their primary care physician to look for any other kind of deficiencies that might be something that you might want to recommend extra supplements for. But most of the time, I would say they really don't. Yeah, I said there's probably two clients that I can think of off the top of my head that were really into that alternative medicine, but they were actually they came from a culture that embraced that. So that was something that we definitely utilized within the nutrition education that I did with them. So that's a great question, Noreen. She's wondering how the $45 thing works. So what we do actually is they go with the park the clinic is called Park Avenue. So they go with one of our um, drivers, our staff members, to the grocery store, and they just fill up their cart with whatever they want. We tell them they only have a $45 budget, and then they actually push the carts over to the register, and the driver is there to kind of facilitate checkout. So once they hit $45, the driver will actually take the rest of their items and put them back into the cart and like push it off to the side and go put it back later. So we just have like a running tab with this grocery store, and we pay it off every month is kind of how it works. So basically the driver just watches, and once they hit $45, that's it. And they are there to make sure that they only buy food or personal care items, obviously are okay. We'll let them use their $45 for that. If they need like shampoo, conditioner, or anything like that, they can buy that with their $45. But that's how we kind of facilitate and manage the $45 at the grocery store. They're with a staff member during checkout. So that's a great question. Um, um, so primary care doctors, we don't always get a release of information for every single doctor. Usually, the only ROIs we get are maybe for their pharmacies so that we can make sure that their meds are being taken as prescribed. That's kind of the only major one. Most of the time, my clients are pretty open about just sharing their lab results with me, so I don't really need to ask for a referral. They'll log on to their My Charts, or they'll ask for a printed out version of them when they go to the doctor, and then they'll bring them to me, and they're pretty good about just like going and like just letting me go over their results with them in the individual appointments. So I haven't ran into where I needed referrals or ROIs for specific primary care doctors. And we do know that they tend to be this, like a lot of the chronic health conditions that we tend to see are high blood pressure, high cholesterol, and then high blood sugar. So we kind of have already incorporated that education into our programming. Usually, if there's anything more specific, then that's what I utilize the individual appointments for, is to go a little bit more specific into their health concerns. Um, yeah, our assessments are, I would say, probably pretty similar to assessments any dietitian would do. My biggest concern, though, maybe that might be different, is exactly how food secure they are and how easily it is for them to prepare their own food if they don't have a home that they're usually at. So that's probably the biggest difference between an assessment that I did as a retail dietitian and then what I do now. If they're interested in working in the area, what do I recommend they do? Honestly, I think what I know that we're working on taking interns, but I think the biggest thing right now is to maybe go to the oh my gosh, one of the like the treatment centers and see if they have a dietitian on staff that they can talk to. Because I know like right now we can't take in specific dietetic interns, but I would talk to them and kind of tell them exactly what to do or like what they could do. I mean, to me, it's very similar to any other community-based um, dietitian practice. It's all about making sure that you kind of start building up those community connections and just kind of getting to know where your community, like what your community needs. And I would say the majority of treatment centers, at least in Minneapolis, do contracting work. So it would really just be introducing yourself and telling the clinic exactly what you could bring to the client's health and like the return on investment that the clinic could get by hiring you and having you there. So that's kind of what I have gathered. It's kind of rare to have a full-time dietitian at the clinic centers themselves. So if you're interested in it, it might be something that you have to slowly kind of do some contracting work with and then work your way into showing them how much investment they can get from you. But yeah, it's definitely one of those areas that I definitely got lucky getting into a little bit. No, since two of my former interns were the two of the dietitians hiring. So let me see if there's anything else I wrote down that I wanted to make sure I talked about. Um, yeah. A lot of them do come from Rule 25 funding. I know that they're changing how that works, but that is how we get most of the funding is they do the Rule 25 and then typically insurance covers we help them get set up with insurance and then that's kind of what covers it. Yeah, so I'm not very active on social media, so I'm really sorry for that. I do have a LinkedIn though. You can connect with me there, Kylie Ryan, on that. Otherwise, the honestly the best way to connect with me and is by emailing me, and I have my email in the description of this event because I do have like professional Facebook page, but I'm rarely on it, so I'm not gonna lie. It'd probably be the least likely thing for me to check. So, but I do have LinkedIn. Feel free to email me if you just want to connect to get some resources, or if you're another fellow dietitian in recovery, I would love to connect and pick your brain for things that have worked for you and things like that since we're starting up our programming here and things like that. So that's how probably the best ways to connect with me since I'm not so great at the social media. I tried to get into it while unemployed during quarantine, but I'm just it's one of those things where it's just not my thing. So I have some, you might see it, but I'm not on it very often, if at all, really anymore. So but yeah, okay. So I think I've gone over the majority of like what we do. So if anybody else has some questions, I can definitely answer them, but I think we are at the 30 minutes. So yes, okay, yeah. So I will definitely be available for questions via email, so don't hesitate to let me know. Otherwise, it was so great getting on and connecting with you all. I hope you all enjoy the rest of your Friday. See you later.